Hey guys, my name's Trevor. I'm here with my friend Joe here, and we're having a conversation today with Tina Steam just about the pressures of life. You know, we live in the Bay Area, and the pressures and expectations that are placed in students that live in the Bay are unlike anywhere I've ever seen in the world. I've lived in Texas, I've lived in Nevada, and the pressures here are unique and they are extreme. Like, let's just talk about those. Like, you have to be the starting captain and like quarterback for the football team. You have to play on the basketball team, be on the volleyball team, softball team. You have to play golf. You have to do all these things. And you have to excel in those sports while being an awesome student where you're having a 4.700 GPA. You have to be taking AP classes. You have to be applying to scholarships. You have to get a ungodly score on your SAT because you have to do all these things to meet these expectations because you have to get into this UC or to this Ivy League school and do all these things, be involved in your community while being in bed at 9 o'clock. Like, it's this like the crazy expectations that are placed on you, this pressure. A lot of times they're placed on you by other people, parents, teachers, coaches. And how do we deal with those kinds of things? Let me just say at the very beginning that you don't have to meet other people's expectations for your life to be a success. You don't have to go to Harvard to be a success in life. You don't have to go to UCLA or USC or any of these big schools. You can be a success on your own story, on your own path. But in talking about these things, when we don't deal with these pressures, things like stress, things like anxiety, worry, doubt, depression, we could go on and on with things that bring us down, but if we don't deal with those, it could get us to a really dark place. And so, Joe, let's have a conversation about anxiety specifically and how you dealt with that. So what did anxiety look like in your life, Joe?
Yeah, so I love what you said about the pressures that everyone's having. I think we all can agree that everyone deals with at least some form of anxiety, whether it's, okay, I'm super nervous before a test, I'm super nervous before a game. Everyone deals with some form of anxiety. But what's crazy about my story was that anxiety kind of just hit me out of nowhere. I was playing college basketball for 4 years. I grew up in Michigan, played basketball my whole life, and I was kind of just always hanging. Like, I didn't really struggle with anxiety. I didn't really struggle with things like depression. Then all of a sudden, after I graduated, about 4 years in, I got married, and I've now been married for a few years, and all of a sudden, anxiety just hit me out of nowhere. Like, I just woke up one day, and my heart was beating super fast, and I couldn't sleep, and I couldn't eat, and I started feeling like I was having panic attacks, and my chest was getting super tight, and I felt like I was gonna pass out, and my palms were sweaty, knees weak, arms were heavy. It was like I was just so anxious all of the time, and I couldn't figure out what it was. And I think that that was a huge thing, was I didn't know about anxiety. I didn't have people in my life who were talking about that stuff, who were teaching me, hey, this is what anxiety looks like, this is what it is, and this is how you deal with it. So I think that's a lot of what it felt like in my own life.
Yeah, it's funny. You mentioned a lot of things that a lot of people probably wouldn't like say, oh, that's something from anxiety, because we oftentimes try to separate ourselves from these. But just if you have any of those kinds of things, if you deal with those things, you're not weird. You're not different. All of us deal with some kind of anxiety or stress or worry at some point in our life. So please don't think that there's something wrong with you, but know that there is something you can do to get better, to improve, to try to rid yourself from this kind of thinking. And so what did you do? How did you cope with your anxiety?
Yeah, so honestly, one of the ways that I kind of had to cope with that was it got bad enough to the point that I had to go see a counselor. And I think a lot of times there's this stigma of, oh my gosh, you had to go see a counselor? Like, that's super weird. Like, you're weird. I don't want to go talk to someone I don't even know. But what's crazy is I've heard hundreds of stories of people who are so thankful that they went to counseling, and I've never heard a story of someone saying, I'm so glad I didn't go to counseling. I'm so glad I dealt with it on my own. So I ended up going to see this counselor, and it was just a great decision. And I was talking to him, and I just telling him about what was going on, and something he said that I'll honestly never forget was he said, anxiety lives when it's fed by lies. And what was happening was I was feeding myself a ton of lies, like, okay, I'm dealing with this, I'm dealing with that, I'm never gonna be able to get through this, I'm never gonna be able, and that's a lot of what anxiety is the reason why a lot of people get anxious is because they don't see an end in sight. So I would tell myself things like, oh my gosh, I'm super nervous because I think this is gonna happen forever. That's a real feeling. Being anxious is a real feeling. Not being able to feel like you can breathe is real. But there's truth in that as well, to where I had to tell myself things like, hey, no, I'm gonna be able to get through this. And that was the truth I had to speak over my own life was, no, I'm gonna get through this. Things are gonna get easier. One of the things that I even had to do was I had to have other people speak truth in my life for me. I had to find people, because a lot of what we're going through, we can't speak truth to ourselves because it's just so big. Like, there are things in our lives that are so big that we can't hold on to them by ourselves. That's a real thing. I think a lot of times we think that that's weak, or we're just giving up. But in actuality, no, that actually takes strength. It takes strength to ask for help. It takes strength and boldness and courage to tell someone that you need help. And in the times that I couldn't speak truth over my own life, I had to have people do it for me. I'm thankful for the coaches, for the counselors, for my parents and people that were in my life, trusted adults who were able to say, no, you're gonna get through this. You're not alone. You're not going through this alone. We're with you. We're for you. What you end up learning is that when you make a mistake, that doesn't always count as a loss. So I think a lot of times we think we have to be perfect. We have to make every decision right. And even we get those pressures from our parents, to where it's like, wait, hold up, you got an A-? Are you joking? Are you serious? Like, we feel this pressure of, okay, I have to be perfect at everything. I have to get 100%. I got a 98 on my test. Well, teacher, why didn't I get 100? We have that pressure. And I think what I've learned is that just because I might make a mistake, that doesn't mean that I lost. A lot of times we think that because we made a mistake, we lost and the game's over. But what I've learned is that, no, the game, you already won. Because if you lost, you learn from it and you don't make the same mistake twice. And I think that was something that I had to learn, was I'm gonna make mistakes in life, but how do I be the best at not making the same mistake over and over again? So that was something that definitely helped me out, was talking to a trusted adult, whether it's your parents, and then maybe it's not your parents, hopefully it is, but if it's not, talk to a coach, talk to a counselor. All the school districts around the area have such amazing school counselors. And then another thing that I had to do, honestly, that's a little bit more tangible, that helped, was something that I had even heard about, was just even squeezing your knees, or like holding ice, like just doing something tangible, like putting your hands to something tangible. Because what happened in my life, I can't speak to anyone else's anxiety, but a lot of what was happening, I realized this is a lot of it's in my head. Like, it's a lot in my head, and it's crazy because things that happen physically, like not being able to breathe, palms sweaty, chest hurting, things like that, all were a result of something that was happening in my head. And the way that I had to work through that was by doing something tangible, by maybe holding ice, getting a stress ball, something like that tangible, maybe going for a walk, removing myself from the environment, maybe not just sitting in my thoughts for an hour, because that's something that I dealt with too, to where it was like, oh, I just sat there and just thought about it. Something that actually helped me a ton, like I said, I played college basketball for 4 years, and something our coach would do if he walked in the locker room and it was a really big game and he could tell that maybe we were a little bit more anxious than normal, he would say, all right, everyone, close your eyes. So we would close our eyes, and he would say, breathe in for 5 seconds, hold your breath for 5 seconds, and then exhale for 5 seconds. And what that actually does is it slows down your heart rate. And a lot of what happens when you're anxious is your heart starts beating really, really fast. And that's a safe way that you can slow down your heart rate, that you can kind of come back to reality. Because what I honestly would do a lot is I would hear people say, all right, you're anxious, take a deep breath. And what do we all do? That's not a deep breath. That's not gonna slow down your heart rate. You're just tired after that. So that was a very tangible way that I thought through and thought, okay, if I can use that in basketball, I can use that in life. If I'm super anxious before a test, what can I do? I can breathe in slowly for 5 seconds, hold my breath for 5 seconds, breathe out for 5 seconds, and then I can start going into what I had wanted to do.
Yeah, so we're talking about pressures, talking about anxiety, all these things. Wherever you are on this spectrum, there's no like one place where everyone's the exact same. Your story is different. So your way to getting out of it is probably gonna be different than everyone else's. But know that you're not stuck there. There is hope at the end of this tunnel. There is something better for you in the season to come.